have a facility that is capable of allowing them to continue playing these sports and participating in these leagues during the winter, because elsewhere in the Plattsburgh area there is a real dearth of large indoor spaces that are capable of hosting those types of recreational programs. So in consultation with Council Schneller, we considered the city's options, whether we would move forward with a RFP process similar to what we did with the gym, or if we would seek simply a management agreement with a third party. Based on the distinction between what we were hoping to achieve at the crate, which was essentially management of existing city programs and allowing those programs to continue to exist, we decided that a management agreement was more appropriate, and per the city's procurement policy, a management agreement is not subject to competitive bidding. So it's like when we are looking for an engineer. We don't have to go out and get several bids. We can simply pick one. Around the time we were completing this analysis, Steve Peters, former superintendent of recreation, approached the city about the possibility of his organization, Elevate 518, assuming those management duties at the gym. So over the course of the past few weeks, Dean, myself, Rich, and Ira as well have worked on putting together an agreement that we felt allowed the public to continue to use that facility while also offering the city, the necessary protection which we would need, because we would be turning over day-to-day management to that third party. And Steve, if you'd like to speak in any more detail to your specific proposal, if the council would like to hear it.
I'm happy to take questions. I did speak last week, though.
Oh, that's right.
You did.
That's okay.
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 So that's it.
Yep, I'm satisfied.
All right.
I wanted to add one other thing to the Trade Center, because I was surprised when I heard that there were 12,000 people that were participating in the winter sports activities at the Trade Center over the winter months alone. And so I asked about city residents versus non-city residents. And there is a pretty close estimate that approximately 43% of the people using the crate are city residents, and 57% are residents from the area surrounding the city and the county. So there's still a substantial, almost a 50-50 split between the city and the rest of the county, which I was pleased to see. I'll just add, looking at the YMCA data, it's 83% of the people using the YMCA are city residents. So it's 27%, I think, were non-city residents at the YMCA. So it's a resource in my mind that is being valued and used by the city residents substantially in this place.
I hope we can have clarified before you vote on it a couple of issues with regard to the RFP, because I know a lot of you have said that the RFP for the gym is very much like the RFP for the marina, and it is, and we've not actually considered any RFP before that didn't explicitly state the price. As a matter of fact, it's a requirement of an RFP under Section I that you all see in the RFP. So hopefully that can be clarified. So without that piece of information, we can clearly say to the taxpayer what the city is financially gaining in return as a dollar amount. It's really not ripe for consideration yet. This is not just a taxpayer rights kind of thing or insurance that we have full transparency in any subsequent negotiations, etc. It's first of all a matter of our legal liability. You'll be turning away, rejecting an RFP at the same time that exactly spelled out how much money the city would receive, and instead deciding to negotiate an RFP where that number is indeterminate. So maybe that can be determined before you vote. And second of all, of course, we're also prohibited legally from any gifting. That these have to be arm's length transactions with no gift content to it. That's just a matter of municipal law. So let's try to sort these things out before you actually take a vote, or if you need more time to table it and then take a vote. I certainly hope that the YMCA succeeds, but I don't want to see us in a potential lawsuit over rejecting a bid that followed the guidelines, even if the bid I recognize was incomplete in other ways. in favor of beginning negotiations without any clear-cut starting point.
This is a wonderful discussion, but this is our infrastructure committee meeting, and I think we've commandeered it away and turned it into a discussion of items that are on the agenda. I'd like to see the rest of the infrastructure committee meeting if possible before we continue.
Am I able to respond at all to that, or is that not the form?
Can we wait until the general meeting to do that?
You're the councilman, I'm just asking.
Yes, there's
We
a
have an
place on the
infrastructure
agenda.
meeting going on right now that we should finish before we
I can answer
continue any
that.
other discussion.
There's a place on the regular agenda for persons addressing council on agenda items, and since this will move to the agenda, that would be an appropriate time for you to speak. Thank you.
It's just that Matt had said if Peter wanted to
I understand.
address the council,
I
so.
know.
Let's see, Peter. Someone with football names, huh? Peter Stevenson.
Jeff, are you looking for oh no, we're still getting.
Well, actually, I can sit back down. We'll finish up real quick. Nothing too glamorous happened here at Public Works. Finished up catch basin cleaning program just in time for the leaves start falling and filling them back up. So we've re-geared our equipment. We are now in leaf mode. Everyone loves that. The guys have been working outside of the city at our right-of-ways and reservoirs, up at Akey Landfill, finishing the final mowing for the season, a lot of these assets we have, and cleaning them up. We could spend maybe another month up there, but we got the minimum done. We're good in that point. Looking at our parks, particularly the beach, Mr. Brody, Superintendent Brody and myself, about when do we close the gate and start turning some of this stuff off. We should be doing that here in this next 4-week period. Final paving patching work, you see it going on throughout the city. Final sidewalk repair work, structure work, manholes, catch basins, those type of things, trying to make a big push to get what we can done before the snow flies and the temperatures get below zero. Mechanics have started bringing down our plow equipment from the summer storage area up at the compost facility. We are servicing and prepping them for the season. One program that we want to try to set up and run here shortly is flow testing of hydrants. We have some new equipment to do this, to meet WWA and NFPA standards. Hopefully, if everything goes well, we should start that probably next week or the week after. We had a little hiccup. Obviously, everyone knows they had the big barn fire in Beekmantown. We had to assist with that as far as providing water. In a 4-hour period, they flowed about 130,000 gallons of water out of our system. That's a good thing. We could supply it. The bad thing was is we have weak spots. We developed 2 leaks, one on Delord and one on Brinkerhoff in consecutive days. They've been repaired. We had a quiet day today. So that is one of the things. When you have a large fire and you flow large volumes of water in a short period of time, that's what we end up with. So other than that, any questions?
Well, do you have any tips for the people putting bags of leaves out? I know you've had discussions about what kind of bags to use and what.
Again, clear bags are acceptable. I would like to see us at some point in time go to the biodegradable paper bags. They're much easier. We don't have to clear the bags. It's always nice that people don't put animal waste in with their leaves. That's
John,
never fun when
we're
you have
already
to
set
empty them.
up for social distancing. We'll have to either take a seat outside or.
Well, there's so many people out there, they want to be part of
Those are
this
the
meeting.
rules, those are the rules.
Remind people that they do need to be bagged, not just swept out into the street. And then, just be considerate of those things. And also patience. We had 2 years ago, we had a very early, the leaves came off, we had early snow. And then spring rolled back around and we didn't have a chance to pick up the leaves. And then we had a deluge of phone calls. I know the mayor's office, our office in particular, we just, people get very frustrated when they don't get instant gratification. So we just ask for patience. We're gonna do the best we can to keep up with this stuff. The guys are out working on it. A nice steady fall of leaves would be great, but we'll just do our best.
Mike, I wanted to bring something. I had a constituent reach out to me about a concern he had with the intersection of Cornelia and Broad and Route 3. And the way he was describing it, apparently it's happened to him a number of times, is that if he's in the left lane, I think coming from Broad, going on to Route 3,
Yep.
that a lot of people aren't staying in their lanes, and people from the right lane encroach on into the left lane when it reaches Route 3 in the intersection. And he was wondering if perhaps we could put like dotted lines or something to mark the lanes through the intersection.
In the short term, we can definitely look at that. Andrew, as you know, we've been working diligently, but obviously with the COVID problem, that intersection is scheduled under the, there's 100% funded, it's called the PSAP grant. And that intersection in particular is, there's gonna be a crosswalk. The design, I believe, is the design 100%, Andrew?
Yeah, the design's almost 100%. It's getting ready to be sent to DOT for final approval. That should hopefully address some of the lighting situation as far as maybe taking, instead of having cross traffic going at the same time, maybe this lane goes and then this lane goes, so you don't have that, crossing and people going in other lanes.
But there is a major project that is slated for that. It just got delayed due to current situation.
It was actually supposed to be constructed this summer, but because of COVID, everything got pushed back. So we're gonna put it out to bid this winter for a spring construction.
But as far as that cheating you're talking about, we'll take a look at it.
Perfect, thank you.
And I have one question about the leaves. This goes back to like our conversation before, where the crews just pick up everybody's leaves or everybody's brush.
It's it's the age-old question. Whose tree was it?
Yeah,
Is it the city's tree or is it the citizen's tree?
I think it's the bagger's tree.
I answer this question every year, and your brother has answered it for forever. We don't know, and unfortunately, at the end of the day, the customers obviously get frustrated because they see they aren't a garbage customer, but yet we're picking their leaves and their neighbors' leaves. Yeah, and if we don't, the city won't get cleaned up. It is really just that simple, Counselor. I mean, I wish I had a better solution. If the council, if we don't, I mean, sometimes there are addresses, for instance, on Cumberland Ave, I'm not gonna give you the addresses, but I think we've picked up over 100 bags of bagged leaves. Now
158 last year.
Is that the one?
158, it took our guys 2 days to pick the bags out of the front yard.
Yeah. So the good news was they bagged
Are
them
they a
back.
garbage company? Does the city have them as a?
I believe they were one of our customers. I can't speak 100% to that, but that's the kind of thing we get. And like I said, if we want a nice looking city, those are the kind of things that, we have to do. Otherwise it's gonna be a free for all, and then there's gonna be a lot of arguments about, again, was it your tree? Was it your neighbor's tree? Was it the city's tree? That's always, I don't know how to police that.
Or they blow them out into the street.
Or they just blow them out in the
Say
street,
it's the city's
yes.
now.
From your backyard into your front yard.
One thing a lot of communities do is they sell stickers, or they give away a certain number of stickers to every single property owner to put on their bags. And so you get 4 stickers, and if you want to buy more stickers, you're welcome to buy them. So at least you're compensated for the 2 days of work you do for one resident alone.
Those are all programs we should look at, and I think that the paper bag option, which I think we should still investigate, just because we spend an exorbitant amount of time with clearing, we do try to compost. We do have a substantial amount of leaf mulch, which we've been actually utilizing a lot in mixing up and making our own topsoil and getting a decent pile ready to screen. So we are, I know that this is Councilor Gibbs has spoke to about those type of things, and we are doing it on a level, maybe not the level that you would like to see, but we're trying to utilize some of these things that we're getting. And like I said, the leaf mulch, for instance, we can mix that with anytime we get a project where we have digging or strippings or anything else to get rid of some of that and utilize it in the future. But yes,
Well, that's good to know.
getting the paper bags, we don't receive enough of them to know how quickly they break down. It'll be a lot easier than ripping bags, but my concern and Mike's concern is I'd like to see once we break them up, if we get in there with an excavator or loader and break the bags down, are we gonna have pieces of paper blown everywhere, or are they gonna rot and stay? And that, hopefully they rot and stay.
You don't dump it with like mulcher or anything like that?
No, we don't have the time. There's that money. We'll have mountains of leaves here in the next week and a half.
Really?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, the only alternative is they end up in the catch basins and.
Well, a lot of them will, yes. That's the problem currently is we're really, with the heavy rain we had the other night, we're crossing our fingers hoping that the catch basins stay clean, so.
Otherwise, you gotta vacuum them out.
Well, we just finished vacuuming. We just stopped the program and we retool our vac truck to be a sweeper to go along with the primary sweeper. So we actually have 2 sweepers out at this time of year trying to we vacuum the leaves that get blown into the street, plus we're picking leaves. So you'll actually see an extra garbage packer out there along with small trucks picking leaves. That's how substantial the effort is.
I was just trying to think of a way the city could be compensated for all the extra work you're having to go through.
Again, the bags are, whether it's a sticker or paying for paper bags, that always might be an option. And, that we can have it in a smaller form.
Especially if you're doing it for people that aren't even customers of your facility.
Yeah. Well, these were practices, again, that were well before,
Your administration.
yes.
Thank you very much,
Okay.
Mike.
Yep.
Thank you.
That concludes our report. Now, I'd like to make a motion to move items 1 through 6 to the agenda.
I'll make the motion.
Roll call.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Mayor Reed?
Yes.
Is there any old business we need to take care of? If not, we're going to new business. There being none, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the infrastructure committee meeting.
I'll second that.
Counselor Moore?
Yes,
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Mayor Reed?
Yes.
meeting is adjourned.
So let us begin our work session for tonight's meeting then with any items you'd like us to make extended discussion on. Or we could also offer your various reports, beginning with Governance Strategy and City Operations, Councilor Barba.
Nothing to report.
City Infrastructure, Councilor Moore.
We just had our meeting, and I hope everybody, got all their questions answered.
Finance and Budget, Councilor Kelly.
Yes, we were given the mayor's budget earlier this week, and I'm sure all of you started to study it. I would like to propose that we have the following budget hearings between now and November 19th. On the 15th, I'd like to conduct a finance budget hearing during the Finance Committee meeting. 22nd, Public Safety, during the Public Safety Committee meeting. 29th would be Library and PMLD. November 5th would be Strategy and Governance, which would include the City Clerk's Office, City Hall, Recreation. And November 12th, City Infrastructure. At that point, we will have covered all of our committees, and I would like to have a vote on the budget on November 19th. And I ask that if you're going to make changes to the mayor's budget, that you do so in the form of resolutions, budget resolutions. And anything that increases expenses, I would like to find savings elsewhere so that we maintain the structural balance of the budget and also deliver the savings that we want to deliver to our taxpayers. Anyone have any questions about that?
Yeah, I have some questions, and I realize we're going to be starting our council meeting just in a couple of minutes. We received the budget on Monday, and I wanted to know, and I've got more questions about this that I'll bring up later. Were the department heads involved in the crafting of the various budgets for their departments?
I actually didn't change the department head submitted budgets in any way, I don't believe, except for relatively de minimis. As you know, the savings that I was able to glean came really in 3 different places. One was in structuring our contingency fund based on how I expected contingency fund will actually be drawn down over 2 years. I don't expect it will be drawn down fully next year. So I'd recommend the next mayor to also then develop a contingency fund of his own for 2022. With discussion with the finance committee and with Chamberlain Marks, properly accounted for the legacy costs of various departments in the cost sharing agreement between the enterprise funds and the general funds. And this is based on Councilor Brody's concern that we should have proper accounting. We should especially have our large enterprises and our nonprofits or exempt properties paying at least their fair share of the enterprise funds. And if we don't have proper accounting of the legacy costs of some of our general fund departments that are paid by these various other funds, then these various other funds, including, for instance, water and sewer, et cetera, electricity, et cetera, to the college, to the hospital, et cetera, they're underpaying. So we've been in effect having a transfer of funds from taxpayers to ratepayers for a number of years. And I know Mr. Brody's working very hard to try to correct that and make sure the ratepayers at least pay their fair share of their costs. Then the third element resulted in no loss of uniformed officers at all by encouraging retirements we already know 1 retirement for next year in public safety, but there's 18 other people who are eligible to retire by next year. And if only 1/3 of those retire, and we put that same number into the academy, we actually glean the remaining savings from there compared to the chief's original budget. So that's where all the various savings come from. So this did not change the various departments' original budget from the original version.
That doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't, because,
Would you take some more time to read the budget?
oh, I did.
And
I went over the budget more than once.
I think if you study it carefully, you'll see that it's fairly reasonable. I don't think there's anything in there that, devastates the city or anything like that.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Staffing remains the same.
I don't see how that's possible.
Well, I think you're gonna see it happen.
Okay, I'll have more questions later, because I know it's 5 o'clock.
Okay. Really would appreciate your cooperation on this budget, Elizabeth. I know you've had lots of questions and you've been pretty skeptical of the process from the beginning, but it really is a great budget in that it delivers a 15% tax decrease to our citizens who have been overtaxed for many, many years. So if we can actually do this, we're doing a huge favor to the community, and I hope you will look at it in that light.
So I asked last week for an update on the process of the budget, what was being done. The budget was created. It was released to us on Monday. We didn't get any information. I'm happy to support a budget if I understand how it was decided.
Well, I will do everything in my power to help you understand between now and November 19th so that we can vote on it. Anytime you'd like to meet and discuss it in detail, be happy.
I asked
to
for
do
this
that.
last week. I asked for information last week. I sent an email out to everybody in the council.
The
Can we
budget
get it?
was not
Please don't interrupt me,
completed.
Mike.
The
So I asked
budget
for an
literally was
update
not-
last week, didn't get it.
The
You said
budget
that
was
we
literally
would get some
not
information, and we
completed
didn't.
until Monday, and it was released on Monday. We could not have done it any sooner.
Okay.
This was not done in any different way than it's ever done. Please remember, this is the mayor's budget at this point. Once the mayor formulates the mayor's budget, the mayor then hands it off to the common council to their deliberations. This is just how the process always works. It's been released in exactly the same way we release it every time.
We had a mayor's budget in June, got a new mayor's budget with a 14% decrease. Were the department heads included in the decision-making? I see departments collapsed I see about $900,000 taken from public safety. I see a CDO that's gutted. I see Parks and Rec, or not Parks and Rec, excuse me, the rec center completely gutted. These are drastic and large. And my question is, were department heads involved in the discussion to talk about how this is going to impact them directly, and how are they going to be able to deliver services and so forth with these drastic cuts? Were they involved in it?
First of all, it's time to start the meeting, but the department heads were consulted on any changes to the budget that I proposed compared to the last round, which the department heads were also consulted, because it was their proposals that went into the original budget. So let's please begin the meeting tonight. Begin the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Reed,
Present.
Council Barbell,
Here.
Council Kelly,
Here.
Council Gibbs,
Here.
Council Brody,
Here.
Council McFarland, Council Moore,
Here,
I'll forego my comments for this time. Please continue.
resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting of the Common Council held on October 1st, 2020 are approved and placed on file among the public records of the city clerk's office.
Moved by Councilor Gibbs and second by Councilor Kelly. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed.
Resolved that the payrolls of the various departments of the city of Plattsburgh for the week ending October 7th, 2020 in the amount of $458,167.76 are authorized and allowed, and the mayor and the city clerk are hereby empowered and directed to sign warrants drawn on the city chamberlain for the payment thereof.
Moved by Councilor Moore, second by Councilor Gibbs. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. I don't think we got through all the department, or the public safety, Councilor Gibbs.
No updates.
Plattsburgh Public Library, Councilor McFarland.
Yes, the library is still not open to the public. The library doesn't have a great ventilation system. We're still evaluating the situation with schools opening and stuff like that. I don't know if it'll be open anytime soon. Library, right now, they're still doing curbside pickups. They're operating at about a third the amount of books being loaned out as they did last year.
Thank you. And MLD, Board President, Councilor McFarland.
No real updates at this time, though at the end of the month, we will have our MLD meeting.
Resolved, the reports as listed are hereby ordered received, and any written reports are placed on file among the public records of the city clerk's office. Moved by Councilor Kelly and second by Councilor Brody. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. No correspondences or recommendations from boards at this time. Please continue.
Resolved that the bills ordered by the Common Council for the week ending October 9th, 2020 in the amount of $390,607.69 are authorized and allowed, and the mayor and the city clerk are hereby authorized and directed to sign warrants drawn on the city chamberlain for the payment thereof.
Moved by Councilor Moore and second by Councilor Barbell. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. At this point in the meeting, I ask anybody from the public who'd like to please come address the council on issues on the agenda tonight to please come forward.
Good evening. Am I able to take this off or not?
As long as you maintain 6 feet distance.
That's fine, I can speak, that's fine. Just was asking. Good evening, and I'm excited to know that our proposal is being considered. I certainly want to answer any questions that you might have about the proposal, but I wanted to start off with some of the things that should be kind of obvious with this type of partnership that we would potentially be entering in with the city. YMCA's all around the country dealing with the current situation. A lot have just opened up. A lot of regulations, a lot of restrictions. Our YMCA is going through its 5th week of reopening. We've been around since 1886, and we have never closed our doors. The fact that we've been closed for 8 months is like everybody else. I'm not, woe is us. There's a lot of people doing a lot worse out there, I understand. But when entering into a conversation about reopening a gym during a COVID pandemic, you can imagine that there are many questions that need to have negotiations and discussion before we can come to an agreement that makes sense for both parties. So our intent with the response to the RFP was to give you some overview of what we plan, and I'll address that in a second. But hopefully you see the reputation that the Y comes with and the success that we have had in many different areas of our community. But dealing with the COVID crisis and dealing with budgetary restraints, there are many different avenues of revenue that are not coming in. So entering into an agreement or a partnership with the city with these such restrictions, we have to make sure that we're not going to lose anything on our side so that it would directly affect the overall operations of the YMCA. I'm sure you can understand that. But we see this as a tremendous partnership for the Y to be able to further help the community to be able to get healthy. And what better time in our life to get people more active, and what better time of the year to get people indoors in a comfortable setting. So we see this as a way to accentuate some of the uniqueness of the rec gym with the large gym space and the indoor track, and also to be able to help spread out our members as a whole through both facilities. This membership that we would be offering to folks at the rec center is a membership to the YMCA. So that comes with a lot of benefits. So we talk about how is this benefiting a city resident? Well, there's many benefits to becoming a YMCA member. So when you sign up for the rec center, you would also have access to our facility on Oak Street, as well as if you traveled around the United States, you'd be able to use your membership there, as we have reciprocity during normal times with the rest of our YMCAs. I think it's a little putting the cart before the horse to go into all the details about what our proposal would include without having negotiations. But we see this as a way to address our very energetic and tremendous group of pickleball players and getting them re-energized, helping out with our older population, our active adults that need to walk the track during the winter months, and also being able to offer health and wellness programs under the guise of a YMCA. Again, there are many different aspects of this, but I wanted to give you that piece there so that I know when you vote on this, that'll be important. But I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have about the proposal. Yes,
I
thank
had
you.
the opportunity to read it carefully today, and I like it. I've highlighted a couple things here if I can find them quickly enough. Well, just in general, I just appreciated your willingness to work with the city to craft a really good program there and to get the gym up and running as soon as possible, and to incorporate some of the technology that you use in the Y currently to, monitor membership and that sort of thing in our facility. And I think that's going to be a real asset for us. So in general, I'd say I'm in favor of it.
Thank you, sir.
I'm hearing my concerns about just the legality of approving an RFP, and by the nature of approving an RFP, rejecting another proposal that followed the condition of RFPs that stated a fixed price. Could you, simply for my benefit, give us a fixed price, and then we know, and as we've done for in the past, after you do an RFP, you do work out some minor details. But an RFP isn't designed as simply giving you the right or us the right to have a long-term negotiation over terms. The following negotiations are usually de minimis, you know, who cleans the bathrooms, et cetera, what division of a utility should be split, et cetera. But the RFP process requires us to compare different proposals with set prices. And so can you give us a price so we can then move on and state that your proposal is obviously based on the price superior to another proposal, which we would presumably have to reject because I imagine both you and them are asking for exclusive use of the property.
Well, I think there's two things to address with that statement. Number one is that we've never seen times like this. So I think the concept of a normal RFP process does come with some extensions during this time. That's just my own opinion. Being that this market, unlike, for instance, the Crete Center, and I haven't looked entirely at his proposal, but it is a group of people that we know are interested in that program. Membership, on the other hand, has its ebbs and flows, and certainly after the rec center closing, we're not sure if we can get that population back or if people are interested. So there's a lot of risk that is going into this. So to come up with a figure, and if you're asking me for a figure today, that's not going to happen, only because, first of all, I only know about this meeting up until about an hour ago. If this was a question, last week, I would have been happy to discuss it further. But I see this as not necessarily the final number, but partnering with an agency that does this and does it well, and an agency, and you know this, we've had a lot of partnership over the years. So I think our reputation speaks for itself. I think our members would say the same thing with what we're dealing with. But again, I think during this time, further discussion, if you want to put a time limit on that and said over the next 3 weeks, we can enter into negotiations, and if you don't approve of that, then we go to your second choice if that's a possibility. But we have a lot of questions, and to put that all into an RFP and to get all those answers within the short period of time that the RFP was put out, I think was not necessarily would not be so necessarily reasonable.
So this is a legal question. Are we able to somehow extend the RFP to clarify these issues?
We did. It depends on the language of the RFP. So I know there was language describing the opportunity to have further negotiations. Justin and I had a brief conversation before this meeting, and I did ask to see whether we could clarify that price component. And as I understood your response, part of it was to say, short answer, we'd have to get more data, but the general philosophy is we're going to provide this program, and there may not be major compensation coming back to the city. And that's fine if that's the answer, because that can put it then to the council to determine whether there's enough public good created by this without a financial component because you're providing other services. So typically you do see a number attached. There is flexibility within the RFP to have further negotiations. So it's kind of a wishy-washy answer to say, in this circumstance, I think it would help, but not be fatal, so long as you could articulate there's other benefits or other programs you're providing to the city.
Is there, by doing that, by having some additional negotiations, are we required to reject the other offer?
We are not rejecting it explicitly, but implicitly by selecting the Y as the winning respondent. Yeah.
Hey, Nate?
Yeah.
It does say in the RFP that if the initially designated conditional operator, if they and the city cannot come to a mutually agreeable agreement, the city reserves the right to go to the next respondent to start a new conversation about possibly having that.
So that's a good point. So a lot of this language is, the statute requires a fair opportunity, and a lot of the specific terms depend on what language we have within our RFP. And that's going to control the world with respect to how we can.
It's my understanding that this is authorizing discussions. Isn't that correct, Matt?
That's all.
Then The rest would seem to be a moot point to argue about. Am I correct?
Do we even
Justin,
need
you've made a very,
resolution
very nice
for
presentation. I
public
appreciate
discussion?
that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we need a resolution to simply authorize discussion and further negotiations? Normally, an RFP is supposed to be an arm's length process. And the reason is because we're not an LDC. We have to do everything arm's length. We can't be doing secret negotiations behind closed doors that we can't afford to every other person. We can't do something for one entity, approve an RFP, and then have somebody else going back saying, holy cow, well, if I knew you're gonna give us that stuff, I would have applied too. That's why we do the RFP. Now, a private organization like an LDC, as you've heard me before, can easily do that. They're allowed to, but the city is not allowed to have basically cut private deals with separate entities. So that's my big concern with doing it this way. But if it's permissible, then obviously we can. And I like to have as much of a public discussion so nobody can ever say, like for instance the other applicant saying, well, if only I knew you're gonna cut me that deal, or Planet Fitness, or whoever might else come in later on. We have to be very transparent. That's why we have to do RFP process,
Sure.
to make sure everything is at exactly arm's length.
Completely
And
understandable.
we're stopping, and by doing these negotiations, we're violating the arm's length premise. But as long as we can do it legally, I'm fine with it. I just don't want to be signing something where I'm sued.
Certainly before we sign a contract, formal agreement, that requires council approval. Again, I'll turn to Matt, I don't have the RFP in front of me, but if there's language saying we're gonna follow the path set forth in the RFP, basically. And I don't have that memorized off the top of my head, but I believe this path that we set forward did require the council to pick a number one choice, I'll call it. And there is flexibility if that number one choice falls through, as Matt just cited, then we can go to choice number two or no choice at all.
And the city cannot enter into any agreement without explicit council approval, right, Dane? Which this resolution does not authorize. So the council does get a second vote.
Right.
Good. Any other questions?
Thank you, Justin.
Thank you. I am fully above board. If there's any questions about what we are interested in, I know isn't the RFP public knowledge? So there's no
Everything's
backroom
public
discussion?
knowledge, absolutely. And I think you're, great proposal. I think you're absolutely above board. You know, love to see you succeed.
Yeah.
I just need to make sure that we're not setting
Completely
ourselves up for
understandable.
liability.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other individuals like to please come address items on the agenda tonight?
Good evening, everyone. I'm John Seaton. I live here in the city. These unprecedented times that we're in right now, city finances where we are. It's shameful right now that there's 50 people sitting out in that lobby right now and not having an opportunity to really participate in a meeting.
This
Which
is
item
not
are you
on the
referring to?
agenda, John.
Well, I don't really care.
Would
I think
you
it's
please
shameful and there
speak
should be
at the end of
arrangements
the
that should be
meeting?
made for people. Ms. Gibbs hit it very eloquently earlier, is that the amount of things that are going to be discussed and safety and all these things, there are residents out there and taxpayers and employees that may lose their job. I would hope in the future you would have the wisdom to provide adequate space for such an important conversation that we'd all like to participate in.
Thank you.
So please, next time.
Any other individuals like to please come address the council on items on the agenda tonight?
Regarding your budget proposal in particular, but also generally, this administration has been systematically sidelining and misleading the public.
Sir, that's not on the agenda tonight.
Committees
Which
have
item are
been
you referring
formed
to?
in the name of community involvement, and members have been quitting out of frustration. This administration has betrayed the trust of our community through intransparency, and worse, it has devalued the criticisms of those who
We
would
need
speak
you to
out.
stop.
These budget cuts are just one more in
This
a
meeting is
series of
adjourned until
decisions.
we can have peace and order in the room, please.
Very well, if you don't want to hear your criticisms.
You're welcome to speak during the public comment at the end of the meeting. We'll reconvene. Any other individuals like to please come address the council on items on the agenda, please?
Good afternoon. My name is Sylvie Beaudreau, city resident. My comment regards item 7B on the agenda, which says resolve to sign legal services agreement addendum dated October 5th, 2020 with Miller, Mannix, Schachner, and Hafner LLC. So since 2019, we've calculated spending on the Prime project that amounts to this much. So $11,867 to Miller, Mannix, Schachner, and Hafner. $162,225,000 to Chase and Company for the seeker. $171,142,000 for Whitenberg for the FGEIS and the finding statement. $64,000 for the county city parking lot. $28,000 for the Broad Street lot. $4,075 for the Durkee Street survey. $500,000 for the Glens Falls National Bank purchase. $34,600 for engineering for the AP MMPP, Arnie Pavone Parking Pavilion. $849,000 for the construction of Arnie Pavone Memorial Parking Pavilion, for a total of $1,900,011,957. That's in a conservative estimate. There's some things we haven't factored in. That's about $2 million that have been spent so far preparing for Prime. My point is that so far the city of Plattsburgh is spending lavishly for a project that, from my point of view, I haven't met anyone in this city who wants it. And now you're about to cut the municipal budget at a time when our city is in crisis. The downtown is so dirty and weedy that a group of citizens have volunteered to begin cleaning it up. Our city beach is so desolate, and its support structures are so dilapidated that it looks like Chernobyl. And city services, including public safety, are being cut to the bone. My point is that you wouldn't have to be cutting over $2 million from the municipal budget if you had not frittered away a similar amount on Prime LLC. So I just want you to know that the public is watching you. The Plattsburgh Citizens Coalition is watching you. We want you to know how your actions and expenditures are being perceived. We oppose massive budget cuts whose cause has been excessive spending on the Prime LLC, a project we hope will never be built. We object to line item 7B, which calls for the spending of more taxpayer dollars on attorney services for Prime LLC. Please request that the applicant, Prime LLC, pay for these legal fees. I know that nothing I can say or do will ever influence your thinking, but I simply wanted to make this statement part of the public record. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Any other individuals like to please come address the council on items on the agenda tonight?
Terry Broderick, and I'm going to be super quick. Just a suggestion, a couple of them. Your meetings that you're holding in here, keeping the public out there. Is there any reason why they cannot be held upstairs where it's larger, where it's more open, where you can accommodate more people? It just seems like you're constantly keeping the public from being part of these meetings. And the second part is, it goes to your meeting for next week. You're holding the public comment portion at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, which again suggests to anybody who is a working member of the community that you do not want to listen to them and that you do not want their input because they will be at their jobs. And that being said, I think you all should realize when you are up for re-election, the people who put you in the seats behind those desks are going to remember those actions. Thank you.
Thank you. Please, there's no comments or cheering from the audience, please. Is there anybody else who'd like to please come and address the council?
Mayor, the live stream is delayed, so if you want to wait a minute.
Okay.
Continue? Well, there's still on the last speaker, so. You want to continue?
Would you like to continue, colleagues?
I'll ask if anyone wants to say anything. Is there anyone else that would like to speak at this point? Beginning, yeah. There's another chance later on.
You ready?
Seeing none, please continue.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the common council approves that all outdoor seating and parking space barriers will be removed on or by October 19th, 2020. This shall only apply to the 2020 year.
Moved by Councillor Barbell, second by Councillor Kelly. Discussion.
Yeah, how does this change from what's currently in practice?
Actually, normally we remove all barriers by the end of September. So we've tried to offer as much latitude as possible for the restaurateurs, and I presume you discussed this perhaps during your pre-committee or your committee meetings. We need to also be sensitive to DPW for when they need to start up for their snow removal.
So we've already extended it past the normal time.
That's right. And you're welcome to extend it any farther you wish. This was just a compromise date based on the restaurateurs' needs, based on how likely people still want to sit outside as of October 19th and the potential for having snowfall.
Thought about that today, so I looked at the weather.com monthly calendar, and the average temperatures for October 20th and beyond are about 51 degrees in the daytime, so it's difficult to imagine that anyone would want to dine outdoors when it's 51 degrees. So I thought, well, that is a good time to end the process. Can't argue with
haven't
that.
been to the lake classes during the Ice Palace time.
And keeping potential snowfall and DPW work in mind, I'd entertain any date you wish.
Have we surveyed restaurants at all, seen what their demand is? Are they still having outdoor customers?
Anecdotally, I've seen a great falling off of outdoor customers of late, but then, for instance, this last weekend wasn't the warmest weekend, but I guess that's kind of the point.
Maybe we ought to table this until we hear from, survey a couple of local restaurants. Do you still want them out there for a while?
If you wish, it belongs on the infrastructure committee most correctly.
No, I think we should move on this. I mean, it's October's longer. I mean, if we don't pass this, then our DPW guys are just going to be really far behind, and this is a lot of work for them. I think we should move on it.
I agree with Elizabeth on that. I think we should go ahead and, it's been an extended 19 more days than normal, and I think we ought to go ahead with it.
Any other discussion you'd like to have? Roll call?
Counselor Barbell?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Brody?
No.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore, the mayor is authorized to sign a legal services agreement addendum dated October 5th, 2020 with Miller, Mannix, Shackner and Hafner LLC.
Moved by Councillor Moore, second by Councillor Barbell. Discussion?
Yeah, to help the public out, this item has nothing to do with Prime LLC.
No, it doesn't.
So I don't know where Ms. Rojo is getting her information, but, yeah.
Any further discussion? Roll call?
Counselor Barbell?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Brody?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
Resolved that in accordance with the request, therefore, the Common Council hereby agrees to and authorizes CDM Smith Amendment 4 WRRF facade architectural in a not to exceed amount of $85,000 dated October 6, 2020. Funding is from the WRRF Mitigation Capital Project with WIIA grant and financing.
Moved by Councilor Gibbs, second by Councilor Barbell. Discussion? Roll call?
Counselor Barbell?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Brody?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the common council approves the construction contract for sanitary sewer replacement to be completed as part of the DRI's improvements to the Betty Little Arts Park, be awarded to the low bidder, Luck Brothers, Inc., in the amount of $160,838, and authorizes the mayor to execute all necessary documents.
Moved by Councilor Gibbs, second by Councilor Barbell. Discussion? Roll call?
Counselor Barbell?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Brody?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
No.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
Whereas the city issued a request for proposals for a recreation center operation and building license, and whereas the YMCA of Plattsburgh submitted a proposal in response, which has been selected by a review committee to be the most promising of all submitted proposals, resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the common council authorizes the director of community development to enter into discussions with the YMCA of Plattsburgh to draft an agreement for that organization's operation and management of the city recreation center. That agreement shall be subject to final approval by the common council.
Moved by Councilor Moore, second by Councilor Barbell. Discussion?
Beth, I'm gonna recuse myself for consideration on this item.
I want to affirm the language that this would allow for negotiations, but does not at all reject the other applicant at this time. If that's correct, Mr. Miller?
Per the terms of the RFP, yes.
Any further discussion? Roll call?
Counselor Barbell?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Brody?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland recused himself. Counselor Moore?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the mayor is authorized to sign an agreement with Elevate 518 LLC for management of the Craig Memorial Civic Center.
Moved by Councilor Barbell, second by Councilor Moore. Pardon me, Councilor Gibbs. Discussion?
Did everybody receive the email from the gentleman asking questions about this?
Byron Bissonette, I think, Brian Bissonette, I think actually he was more referring to the rec center than the Crate Center.
Yeah, that was my impression too.
Well, I think he asked about this one too.
Was it? Oh, okay.
But it's, the Crate Center does provide a break for city residents as well as the gym.
So that was the question. I don't know if Steve or Matt can answer that. He was asking, was there a benefit for city residents over and above, I think, county residents? Or
Correct.
Other
Preferred rates.
It's almost a 50-50 split between city residents and county residents at the Crate Center. 40, I had it here earlier.
Is the city giving it to the beach as well?
The city allows the town free access to the beach based on the Falcon Seaboard Agreement of 1991.
57% are non-residents at the Crate and the teams that are playing there, and 43% are city residents.
Well, with the email is like, is it 100% cost to the operator for the following structures in the lease? Or are we going to be operating at a loss again? If I understand it right. Is that what
That's
it's-
correct.
So where does it come out, our operating cost versus income?
If we left the Crate Center closed, did nothing, it's going to cost us about $40,000 to do that. And the difference between having in about $57,000 if we contracted and operated a program. So it's about a $17,000 swing to provide recreational services for 12,000 people over the winter. So one way, it's a $17,000 difference between doing nothing and having the programs in there all year. And those numbers are estimates. Those are not I mean, they're the best guess that people can come up based on last year's or 2 years ago operating costs. So it could be $12,000 more, it could be $20,000 more. But we're taking the figures that Richard and other people put together on this, so it's a $17,000 cost. Just recognize that the recreation department and the recreation programs in this year have been devastated. They have been wiped out. This is the opportunity, essentially, to bring some recreation programs back to the community. And I think it's, I don't need to walk through the health benefits, all the other benefits that are associated with recreation. For $17,000, I believe our costs for the recreation programs in the last full year that they operated were close to $800,000 for the city, for these two programs. So you're talking $17,000 for one of those programs to operate throughout the winter months.
Was that part of our budget for 2021?
In the budget I'd submitted, I had first of all, Councilor Barbell is very correct in that we incur certain costs for those facilities regardless. Our debt service does not go away. We have to pay for a minimal amount of utilities even if we didn't operate programs. Of course, the utility costs will go up more if we have programs in there. And those minimal costs are in my budget for both the rec center and the crate center. Additionally, in my budget, of course, as you know, we have found a private-public partnership for the marina. And in my budget is full funding for the beach. And that was in the most recent version as well as in the version that I submitted in the summer. So to find operators, I fully embrace absolutely the spirit of finding operators for both the crate center and the rec center. I'm in favor of this, although I don't vote obviously unless it's a time in favor of this proposal. I'm also in favor and very hopeful we can come up with something for the rec center as well. My only concern is that we protect the taxpayers by knowing exactly what relationship we're getting into and for exactly how much. And we recognize that any subsidies, if we end up giving them, which are going to be implicit because there's no way, as you correctly said, we're going to cover the loan interest costs and the utility costs, that we're not subsidizing residents from elsewhere because we legally are not allowed to. So for me, it's only a legal concern that we're following the requirements of municipal law, but I think we can construct a satisfactory agreements from all parties and do so. So this would then complete the picture. If we could manage to get agreements for these two sites, we would basically have all of our recreation facilities open under either city management or private-public partnerships.
Only $17,000.
That's just the crate.
That's just for the crate.
Just for the crate.
Actually, it was a little bit more
Well, it's
than
more than
17,000,
17.
24,000 if I recall correctly, but I could be wrong with that number. And that's for a 6-month period too, so presumably something else would occur for the next 6 months. And by the way, those prices, that additional revenue, beyond which we already know we're going to have to incur for the interest, et cetera, is exactly consistent with the budget I put through. So I'm very comfortable with that figure.
I think one of the big things is we look at the budget as well and recognize, you know, we as a council are going to have to make a decision from January to June when this program ends. Are we going to continue to operate the Crate Center? We are providing a benefit that goes way beyond the city of Plattsburgh. And it's providing a benefit to the region, and nobody but the city of Plattsburgh is providing any funds to maintain and support the facility. They are paying to use the facility and the cost of the programs that are in the facility. But the city of Plattsburgh, just as with the beach, provides 100% of the cost. Now, we get reimbursed with the, at least we have reimbursement coming in at the beach that offsets some of our costs at the beach, but it doesn't cover our costs to operate the beach.
Pretty
So-
close for the beach. That's the one entity that has typically been about a break even.
And I would just want to make the case that I think it has to be a real priority between January and June for the council to look at the facilities that we have and make some determination about the long-range plan for recreation at both of these places. You know, you're gonna have, hopefully we'll have the breathing space with the Crate Center to have that 6 months, still have programs out there and time to think about what do we do with that building and what do we do with the facility. And if, depending on how this works out, and hopefully it will work out in terms of a program where we have the Y with a longer term effort at the rec center to have but we should not delay what we want to happen with the rec center either. And we ought to be targeting middle of the year to have a long-range plan. Are we going to continue to use that rec center? Are we going to, then if we are, we're going to be having to look at a capital fund project to replace the roof and to refurbish a number of areas in that building. And so those are the things that are on the table. They're not really on the table for a discussion today, and they're not being voted on. I just want to make sure you understand that's what's coming down the road. This is a great first step to try a new partnerships and to get something off the ground, but it's not the solution to what we have in the recreation department.
I couldn't agree with you more. And we very much support the work of the YMCA, for instance, in the fact that YMCA is looking for a large permanent home to service a broader region. And if you recall, the council had in a previous resolution from months ago approved $5,000 to go to that effort. And I articulated at that time the hope that other municipalities would at least participate in that study. We are the only taxpayers, our city of Plattsburgh are the only taxpayers that anteed up for that greater study for a regional YMCA to service the broader region. No other taxpayer group was willing to do so. We need to have people understand that these fee-for-service places cannot be subsidized and paid for primarily just with city and taxpayer funds. It has to be a broader consortium. We've approached the various municipalities in the county. Nobody seems to be particularly interested in helping out. Everybody is very happy to use the facilities, but nobody seems to be particularly interested in helping out. And that really has to change. The taxpayers of the city of Plattsburgh can simply not continue to fund and subsidize the entire region for fee-for-service entities that compete with the private sector. It's unfair to our taxpayers, and it's also unfair to the private sector, who also try to compete in that space against an entity that is subsidized. So we can figure this all out, but I think the best solution is some sort of a regional consortium that includes the county, includes the other municipalities, in a basis proportional to their population or the number of people that use the facility, so it's not simply being paid for by the taxpayers.
Agree. And I have one other last question, and this is something that probably wouldn't be relevant any other time than right now during COVID-19, but if you have in the gym at the Crate, you have all these kids running up and down the soccer field, are you wearing masks?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, because when I say you've got to worry about air filtration for the great incubator site or masks.
Everyone's wearing masks, and the heaters are in full 100% from outside as well.
Okay.
So we've already explored all of that within our department.
I was just wondering about that.
Any other comments? Roll call?
Counselor Barbell?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Brody?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
No trouble, we've got the summer thing resolution for initial consideration. Any new business and council reports?
Yeah, I have some continuing questions about the budget. Next week, there is a 2 o'clock public hearing?
Correct.
I can't make a 2 o'clock meeting. for the budget that is going to be discussed. Steve, are you able to come at 2 o'clock?
I'm going to be working.
Okay. Can we change the time?
I don't think we can, because it has to be.
It's next Thursday at 2 o'clock. I can't be here for that.
I can't either, thank you.
And Steve, guess you've got 3 counselors who can't even come to the budget hearing that affects us. Can we move it?
I don't think we can at this point, and the reason why we had that time is so we could have, we expected an awful lot of speakers, and we wanted to have many hours for them to be able to speak without then having to ultimately delay your council meeting later and later and later into the night.
I would like, at next week's council meeting, I would like to hear from department heads and ask them to discuss how this budget is going to affect operations and how they're going to deliver services. So I'm hoping that department heads can inform the following week. We're going to start budget hearings. And I think that would be very helpful for us while we engage in the process. I won't be able to make a 2 o'clock budget hearing. I'll be working, and the other 2 counselors as well. So
Wouldn't the subsequent budget hearings be designed exactly for that purpose of having those further discussions in depth?
I would like to hear from them before, because I'm not involved in all of these departments. I'm just making a request. I'd like to hear from them.
Councilor Kelly?
I'd like to remind the public and the council that these meetings are streamed live. The public hearing is streamed live. And if you have questions, you may submit them in advance, and then your questions will be brought forward, or the points you'd like to make.
Mike, I
So the
realize
same
that.
goes
I can't
true.
attend.
The same is true not only for the council, but for the public. Any person can make comments electronically, by email, during the YouTube stream, if they can watch it from wherever they are. There are all kinds of opportunities for the public to weigh in on this. And as we discussed earlier, we are going to have budget hearings that are open to the public and live streamed at every turn. So I don't think it's a particular impediment to the public input, public process, but
Any further council reports?
I thought it was interesting when they suggested that we go upstairs.
You can't do the live stream upstairs. That's the reason.
That's always been the technological.
Yeah, it's horrible. You can't hear people. For some reason, the acoustics in there are terrible. You can't hear people in there. I know, when I attended a meeting there, and I would not do it again because something about the dome, it just sucks up all the sound.
And we don't have these technologies to live stream, and we're required by our organization rules to live stream at all times.
Yeah. Well, just a live stream these days, nothing more than a tablet and pushing the button that says live. I do it every night.
I'm not
Because I actually enjoy and glean and learn a lot.
Well, I gotta go home after meetings, you know that.
Welcome, and I like it. And I think it's important that we're supposed to be the voice for the people, not the voice for the council.
You're right, and just remember that Plattsburgh, the city, was named the single most open government in the entire state recently. We do an awful lot to try to do that outreach. It's always worthy remembering that other communities, including most communities around us, don't have nearly the level of access, the live streaming, the YouTubing, the recording, etc., that we really strive to do. We've done so throughout the complete COVID environment. COVID and the rules that the governor promulgated as a result of COVID doesn't require us to do almost any of the things we're doing, and we've chosen to do them, including public personal access to all of our meetings right from the very heart of the COVID era. So I'm very proud of what the city has done. Obviously, we could always do more, but we just need to look at our peers and just remember that we're doing an awful lot more than just about anybody else, including everywhere around us. You try to look at and show me the deliberations that, for instance, that the county has had over their furloughs and layoffs and budget, and we know how public ours are. You can't find it. Even they're right next door, and they're very technologically advanced as well. We do this as a matter of principle. I also like to get back to COVID and your COVID concerns a moment ago too, Councillor Brody. We're experiencing a pretty heightened level of COVID activity. This week alone, we probably had more than a dozen positives. We're starting to have a rate of COVID infection in Clinton County that is equivalent to some of the worst weeks in the period in April and May. Hopefully this is just for some reason a 1 week anomaly and everything's going to pop back to normal, but a lot of people also expect it won't. Canada is now experiencing their highest rate of infections in Quebec than they have since the first wave. I think the growth in infections in New York State has now increased by 50% over just a couple of weeks ago. And something like 20 states are in that same category of dramatic growth in COVID. We're going to do our best to try to constrain it in the city of Plattsburgh. I do recognize there's an awful lot more failure to comply with regulations lately than perhaps a couple or a few months ago. People are becoming complacent. We're all sick and tired of all this. But I'm becoming increasingly concerned for our community and this outbreak. And I'll certainly monitor it closely and keep you apprised if this trend seems to continue, but it's been a pretty difficult last 5 days or so. And also for the next 2.5 months, I'm going to continue to show the utmost concern for the taxpayer. And the taxpayer doesn't mean only the homeowners, because we forget that even though we're almost 2/3 renters, they pay property taxes too. They just don't do it directly, they do it indirectly. And over the last few years, by the end of next year's budget, we'll have saved the taxpayers about $21 million based on the trajectory we were on. Councillor Kelly was on the council at that time, and we were looking at a couple of years of potential double-digit tax increases back then because of hugely excessive spending over revenue for a number of years that eroded a $6.8 million fund balance down to zero and negative numbers. And we've turned that around, and that's left $21 million more in taxpayers' pockets. And because we've been able to decrease the OPEB obligations by carefully monitoring healthcare costs and by reducing our staff primarily through attrition, we've narrowed the long-term OPEB liability from about $172 million to $151 million, another $21 million improvement over the last few years. That's $42 million that's remaining in our community taxpayers' pockets as a consequence, taxpayers now and taxpayers in the future. And that's what motivates me, is to make sure that we're following the letter of the law and creating as much affordability for our struggling taxpayers as we possibly can. I'm proud of our efforts, and I'll continue to do it. I'll continue to be the voice at every step of taxpayers, be they renters or owners, and I think we have a responsibility to do it. I also, by the way, agree with some of the things that Sylvia Boudreau had said. I think that the DRI really got away from us. I think it could have been done better. I think that the city had an expectation that a lot of those dollars, $1.8 million that she alluded to, would be paid by the DRI itself. We were told that. We're not receiving those funds from the DRI, and we're paying for them out of our pocket. I think if any of us knew that at the time, we probably wouldn't have proceeded. We have to figure out a way to focus on community development and leave other entities to do economic development. That way, the contractors and the private sector that benefits from these developments actually pay for their share rather than the taxpayers. So I'm gravely concerned about the way we've done things in the past, and I'm hopeful that we'll do things better in the future. I wish I was more a part of some of those decisions. I haven't been typically, but I think we're now at a place where we need to recognize that this model simply is not working. The taxpayers cannot afford to continue to write checks that are presumably going to benefit the greater community and are often conferred on private beneficiaries. There's other models to do this. The LDC is ready to go. We need to start coming up with a system where those that receive the benefits actually also pay for the benefits. I don't blame anybody for this. I just think that That's the mechanism that was put in front of us. That's the only tool we had at the time. I don't think we had any belief that all those costs that Ms. Boudreau had outlined would have occurred back in 2016 or 2015 when we pitched this project. Our predecessor pitched this project to the state government. I think, as a matter of fact, I'll even go farther, that I was told early on that our having to move parking would somehow be covered out of the DRI. And then it turned out that it was our responsibility. Fortunately, that some of that was compensated for from the FRB, but not all of it. So this is really a series of unfortunate circumstances. Now, do I believe in the DRI? Absolutely, I still do. It's one of those things, and Mr. Miller said this in other examples before, that you get so deep into something that now we really can't afford to not complete it. And I'm also incredibly grateful for anybody who wants to plunk $25 million of any project into our community. And a state that's willing to plunk $10 million into our community, especially the various things that the Prime has demonstrated that they're willing to accommodate to make this project happen. But I think Councillor Barbell said a moment ago that we're going to need to figure out better ways to do some things. I think that also applies to understanding there's a difference in economic development, which is primarily usually conferring something to private developers, and that needs to be done a different way, versus community development, which we haven't done an awful lot of for the last number of years, has been too focused on economic development. The community development is beautifying our downtown, quality of life aspects. The Saranac River Trail is a good example of community development, not economic development, because it's a public facility we end up with in the end. We should be doing more of that stuff. We should be relying more on that $2 million revolving fund that we haven't even used for years and years and years. There's a lot of things that we need to do differently, but we need to carefully understand the difference between community development and economic development. When we do economic development, we as the city become the applicant, and then we end up hiring lawyers to represent the city's interest, and then we have hire lawyers to fight with the city because the city is the applicant of the zoning and planning boards. Finally, we need to better unite our zoning and our planning functions, and provide a one-stop service for people to come and address all their zoning and planning needs all in one place, not give them the bureaucratic runaround. So there's a lot of things that we need to start doing better. I don't think we intended to go down this path or have it be as costly as it has been. It's just the circumstances and the tools we had at the time. But I think it is time for us to rethink how we're going to do things in the future, and understand the difference between community and economic development, and try to be much more sensitive to the fact that ultimately it's the taxpayers that pay for these costs the way we've been doing things. And I believe the taxpayers are paying too much in the city of Plattsburgh because of some of the ways we've structured things.
I'll say, I think a lot of that is absolutely nonsense. First of all, like, just because we haven't been reimbursed on some of the DRI projects, it does not mean that the city is going to end up paying those out. And certainly, our budget woes are not caused by waiting for reimbursement on the DRI from the state. Certainly, a lot of the things Ms. Boudreau brought up are caused from defending things by the PCC for illicit lawsuits. There was allegations that we needed to hire Chazen and engage in a seeker process that was more expensive because we were defending ourselves from these threats of lawsuits. Not all of this stuff is based on us being frivolous with money. And certainly the cause of our budget woes, it's not the cause of that. And certainly the reason your budget is looking to cut public safety has nothing to do with the DRI. And certainly we haven't voted on a budget. I haven't voted on any budget or any item relating to any budget for next year. But and I also think we were definitely going in, and we all knew from the beginning that we were going to have to invest something. The state didn't come in and say, we're going to spend $10 million and the private entity is going to come in and spend $26 million and the city is not going to have to invest anything. So sure, there's always mistakes and there's things we can do better. but I don't think that necessarily this can all be put on the city for, even though we haven't gotten reimbursed on a lot of projects from the DRI, that all of our budget rules are stemmed from the DRI. I think that's horribly misleading.
I don't think I stated at all that by the way, I don't think we have budget rules. I think we're doing a very good job in the budget. I don't think that the various things that we're discussing with regard to the budget are a response to being broke. I think we're trying to put the budget in a better position to be sustainable in the future. I think when you saw the budget figures for this year, I think we're managing the budget incredibly well, incredibly carefully. We can do more. So, I reject your premise. This isn't all about budget woes, and we aren't cutting departmental personnel. We're looking for people to retire, and with the agreement that for every person who retires, we'll put somebody else in the academy at a lower cost. So that's how we're gleaning some of these savings. This should not be characterized as some sort of knee-jerk response to some sort of budget crisis. We're managing very carefully, and these things are simply good ideas. To not do them is simply leaving money on the table and allowing for inefficiencies and padding the budget too much. And when you pad a budget too much, you know what we find? We find people spend too much because they've got it there. So producing a tighter budget should not be confused with trying to somehow penalize departments. That's not what we're doing.
Well, I'm not saying that. I haven't gotten a chance to read it on it yet. I did get it on Monday, but I've been working all week. But that's exactly what Ms. Booker was saying. She said the DRI has cost us $2 million, and now we're trying to cut $2 million from the budget. Those two things are not.
Yeah, you're right. I agree that was an incorrect premise. That's not what's going on. But it is also the case that if we had done all this in a different format, it wouldn't have cost the city taxpayers as much. More would have ended up being paid for by the developer. But since we are, in essence, the developer, the applicant, that's come back on the taxpayers. And if you've heard me articulate one philosophy over the years, it's always been that we should not be competing with the private sector, and we should not be out there conferring benefits on the private sector that's not available to everybody. I really believe in level playing fields. I don't think we should throw money at Joe Smith if I'm not willing to throw money at John Seaton, for instance. Just level playing fields. And that's why everywhere else we do things more through IDAs and TDCs and chambers of commerce, and you don't see the other governments and municipalities in the business of economic development. They're in the business of community development. We've made that mistake. We don't need to keep making that mistake in the future. So in that respect, I believe I agree with Ms. Boudreau. There were a lot of avoidable costs if we'd done it in a different framework. It would have been paid for by somebody, just wouldn't have been paid for by the taxpayer. But if you're saying that you disagree with Ms. Boudreau and that that's the reason for her budget woes, I agree with you there. They're not the reason for our budget woes. Our budget woes is because when I came to office and when Mr. Kelly was still here, we were spending $1.2 million a year more than we were receiving. And we were planning to spend even more money than that the next year and the next year after that, and would have required double-digit tax increases for a couple of years to fix that. We fixed those. And we're doing well in right-sizing and creating for a more longer-term and sustainable budget for the city of Plattsburgh. And if the city of Plattsburgh can be healthy for another 20 years because of the steps we've taken today, then we've done our work. We certainly were on the road to insolvency and bankruptcy 4 years ago.
Yeah, I just love the Moody's rating where they actually laid out the factors that could lead to an upgrade of the rating versus factors that could lead to a downgrade of the rating. And if you read that carefully, you can see that there are so many things that we have done that they appreciate and that have helped our budget tremendously. And then there are some things that we should avoid, things that are pitfalls. And And one of those, of course, is the OPEB liability, which you spoke of earlier. That's something we definitely need to address now so that councils in the future won't have to.
I think another one they said is not to simply pat yourselves on the back and say you've done a good job, everything is fixed, but or even fall back in the old patterns. But they said if we stop continuing to strive to become more efficient, then we're going to be downrated.
Yes, that's exactly what they said. The continued successful implementation of management's financial recovery plan is important, very important. And you'll notice that it's called a financial recovery plan. It does not mean we have recovered and that we can be complacent. It means that we must continue to monitor finance and come up with ways to do things more creatively. Tonight was a good example of that, turning over the two programs that we haven't been able to sustain to the private sector and do with it. Seems to be working for the marina, but this is a strange year in which not too many people were boating, so we'll have to see what really happens with that in the future. But it looks promising.
And I fully embrace the things that you decided tonight. Like I say, I want to follow the rule of the law, but I think that we're right on the right track with more private-public partnerships. And I also see an echo out there in the community saying, geez, you fixed everything, now's the time to start going back to our normal pattern, which got us into trouble in the first place. Right. And Moody's is exactly right. They say if we don't continue to look for reforms, we're going to be downgraded.
You can't spend your way out of a fiscal crisis. You can only continue to economize.
You keep talking about the fiscal crisis, or long-term, what is it? I don't remember the acronym for the long-term retirement. Well, I think we explained to the public what that is. What we're talking about is the retirement costs and the healthcare costs for retirees is now up to, our debt is approximately $155 million that's out there in costs. That if the system changes at all, we could end up being required to start pouring money into that from the taxpayers to reduce that debt that we're holding right now. And I don't think people realize. They think, well, oh, you don't have a deficit this year, therefore it's, you don't need to make any reductions, you don't need to look for any efficiencies, you don't need to reduce anything. And that's not the case when you look at the broader case. And I thank the Press Republican for when they put the piece on the budget, the mayor's budget, they actually had a piece from Moody's. And people ought to look at Moody's report. We ought to put it on our website so people can look at that. This is an independent financial organization who analyzes the finance status of all cities, counties, businesses. Read what they say about Plattsburgh. This is not us making up something here about where we sit right now. We're not doing great. We're doing a hell of a lot better than it was 4 years ago. But there's still a long way to go for the city to get the city in the status that it needs to be in. And I think people need to understand that there's going to be a continued effort here to look at finances and to figure out how do we improve the operation of the city. And it's a long-term process.
And you alluded to something called GASB 75. It's the accounting for other post-employment benefits. For us, that means health care, lifetime health care for retirees. There's more retirees who are paying for health care than we have active employees. That $151 million liability we have, if the proposals that are going around other state governments comes into place, and if we're required to do what private employers are required to do by law, we would have to set aside an additional, I think the number is somewhere around $4 million per year to properly fund that over time. $4 million of additional per year would translate, compared to my budget, to something like a 40% tax increase. Once we start talking about a 40% tax increase to properly fund that, we're now pushed into the area between caution and red with the comptroller. That pushes us into a mill rate exceeding 15 per thousand under, based on our current tax rate. And that, at that point, the city's under a watch status. If the regular 2 or 3% cost increases we face every year, we budget into our 5-year plan, require us to continue to increase taxes to cover costs, which is relatively inevitable. That then puts us a few more years later into the 20 mill rate. At that point, we are essentially in receivership. The city of Plattsburgh will be run by a board appointed by the state government because we can no longer manage our finances. We were estimating on the trajectory we were in back in 2017 that we were only about 6 years away from reaching that point on that past trajectory. So the stakes are pretty high. The sums are huge, $151 million of OPEB liability. If we stopped all of the general fund now and just devoted all of our annual taxpayer revenue instead to the general fund, but to paying off the OPEB obligation, we're talking about 15 years of property tax payments based on our $10 million levy every year, just to pay off that long-term obligation. Now, who's paying that obligation? It's not you and me, it's our kids. We went and overspent, made promises that we didn't properly fund, said, don't worry, some other generation in the future is going to pay for it. It is going to be paid for. It's going to be paid for by our kids who weren't around to enjoy those services that we all enjoyed when we made all those promises. So the OPEB, that's why Moody's believes this is a serious problem. Moody's understands that, and they understand that when they rate sovereign governments as well.
Pardon me, could you please stop self-congratulation and get on with the meeting? There are people out there who would like to speak with you. Thank you.
Moody's, when they look at other states and other countries as well, understand this and rate other countries' national sovereign debt in the same sort of way. We know that in the United States we've got about $20 trillion of overspending accumulated that some generation in the future is going to pay. It's unconscionable for any government to overspend and then send the bill to another generation, but we've done that, and they're going to be paying for it for years and years and years to come, and that's going to be a built-in headwind on our future development. We have to come to terms with that. We've made progress. We brought it down from 172 million to 151 million through careful monitoring of our healthcare costs and through attrition, but we need to do better. We need to reckon with it. We've been irresponsible. We've spent beyond our means, and we've sent the bill to another generation. Any other councilor reports? Seeing none, are there any closing public comments from the public on any issue of mutual concern?
I have a feeling we got people outside waiting.
There's about a 3-minute delay.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah.
Hello! Public can now speak.
Good evening. My name is Doug Lyon. I'm a business owner in the city of Plattsburgh, and I do represent the silent majority. I'm a proud supporter of law enforcement and our first responders. Over the past 25 years, my company has experienced its fair share of theft, vandalism, break-ins, and in every single instance, the Plattsburgh City Police Department has exceeded our expectations. Many of us would like to know why you're cutting the budget for public safety when you have a surplus budget. We'd also like to know why you have not filled many of the vacant positions at City PD. The mayor says 6 or 7 police officers are going to retire this year, and he's going to replace them with new recruits at a fraction of the price. Mr. Mayor, I ask you, how are you going to do that when it takes nearly a year from the time you hire someone until that person is out on the street fulfilling that role. There's an academy taking place right now in the city of Plattsburgh, and there are 0 recruits for City PD. I would like to know how many people in this room have done a ride-along with either City PD, Fire, or EMS in the last year. Show of hands. 1. Were you raising your hand? Yes. Okay, 2. So 2 people have done a ride-along. You folks are crunching numbers and pushing papers and making decisions that not only impact the safety of our community, but the lives of the very people who are serving to protect us. And that's wrong. I have in my hand a check for $1,000. This represents the mayor's 14% cut for my business. Mr. Mayor, I'm sure you're very proud of your tax cut. Quite frankly, I don't want it. I've made this check out for $1,000 to the Plattsburgh City Police Department Explorer Program as a symbol of my way of rejecting your tax cut and showing my support for public safety. And I will continue to encourage my fellow business owners and residents of Plattsburgh to do the same. Silent majority, no more. Thank you.
Thank you. I just need to correct that. Actually, in my plan, I had believed there'll be a succession of 3 police officers next year, not 6 or 7.
That you're hiring 3?
I expect that 3 will retire, and I would then hire 3. Correct.
Okay, so when they retire, you'll hire 3, or you'll have 3 already in the pipeline?
If we know people are retiring, I'll immediately put 3 in.
It takes almost a year to get a cop on the beat.
I'm just trying to answer your question.
Okay, I respect that. But I think that you're going to have a time period where somebody retires next month. You're going to be 10 or 11 months without that person being replaced in the same capacity.
We're always in the boat of understanding that people may retire and developing succession plans. We don't typically put people in the academy under the assumption that people may retire. As soon as we know there's a succession planning necessary, we put people in the academy. Next year is no different.
How come that hasn't been done with the last 4 or 5 positions that are vacated?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think we put a total of 5 people in the academy over the last couple of years, not anybody this recent cycle. But we only found out after the academy already began of 1 retirement in this last cycle.
So you're going on the record saying you put 5 people in the academy in the last 2 years?
I think in the last 3 years, I said, I think we put 5 people in the academy, but I have to check the numbers. But I'm not trying to snow you. I'm just saying we're trying to do succession planning. We understand that there's 18 people eligible to retire that have not already announced the retirement, and in police and fire.
So
and we
when you
believe
say
a certain fraction of them are going to retire next year, and we need to start planning accordingly.
When you say there's 18 or so eligible for retirement, are you saying that there's 18 city police officers that are at their 20-year mark?
No, I think I just said police and fire.
Okay.
And that they'll be approaching their retirement, so we need to come to reckon with that sometime next year. By the middle of next year, I expect there's going to be 18 people eligible to retire. So I'm trying to plan for that date.
I'm sure a lot of them are going to take up on it. Thank you.
And as they do, I'll put more people in the academy, 1 for 1.
Good evening. I'm Seth Silver again. You might remember me from last week. I brought some visual aids this time. Last week, I addressed the council and I said I was confused as to where the cuts in the $900,000 toward public safety were coming from, where the idea was coming from. This week, I'm kind of coming disappointed. I found some information out and I've been promised some information, and really, I think people are being misled, and I'm here to shed a little light on where I'm coming from with that viewpoint. I have as my visual aids
Large emails. I had emailed my counselor and simply stated my objection to taking $900,000 out of the general public safety budget, seemingly unplanned. I had many responses. This is on September 30th. I said, there's data that indicates things. Look at some data we've collected. Again, the data indicates we have plenty of officers. Please arm yourself, me, with facts and data, not gut feelings. So I said, okay. So myself and Counselor Kelly engaged in an email discussion where, again, on the 30th, I was told there's data. I will be happy to show you the data. Look at the data with an open mind, and I think you'll be amazed. Counselor Kelly also said, I am armed with data and will use it to the best advantage of the taxpayer. I said, great, show me some data. I then appeared at a city council meeting last week. I was told, if you'd like to see the data, we can certainly make it available to you. Once again, I said, great, I consistently would like to see the data. On October 2nd, I was told Counselor Barbell is currently working with the data and trying to figure out how to get it to me. Sounds reasonable. On October 6th, I guess really I'll have to just read this. Ira Barbell is compiling the data for public consumption. It's all public data from the PPD. As I recall, there's information about the numbers and types of arrests. It says, Ira was planning to compare PPD's numbers with other cities' data to see how we compare. That will take time. I hope you can be patient and wait for Ira to finish his work. I'll check with Ira and see if he can provide me the PPD data. So that kind of shut the conversation down at that point because I realized there's no data. I can't look at anything with an open mind. I can't be amazed because the data from the PPD isn't even available and it hasn't been worked on and hasn't been compiled. How could it possibly be analyzed by anyone, let alone me, in enough time to propose $900,000 being removed from a budget? Simply put, that doesn't pass the smell test. There's no data. Data, to me and probably to everyone, includes such things as types of calls for service, demographics of the population, things called Part 1 crimes versus non-criminal complaints, salaries, health benefits, training, equipment, and finally, the number of employees. I don't know how to do data for a fire department, but I do know how to do it for a police department. And I know at a minimum, those factors are looked at. I've heard a few times there's no loss of uniformed officers. I don't know if that includes dispatchers or civilian titles, but that is also very concerning as they fill a really vital role in the city police department. So I guess I'm just going to urge, before we seriously consider taking $900,000 from the public safety budget, let's look at this with an open mind. Let's do some legitimate, real research and not make any hasty decisions. I think a decision now is going to hurt the city, is going to hurt the taxpayers and the public for years to come. So I just implore you, please look at that with an open mind.
Thank you. Seth, I'd like to update our conversation by saying that Ira and I are ready to meet with you next week if you're available.
I've been available since the 30th when
you available
we
next
first
week?
discussed it. Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, and then we'll get together.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm
Thank you.
available almost any time.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. How are you folks doing? My name is Chris Rosenquist. I'm a county legislator, downtown business owner, and obviously a mayoral candidate here in the city of Plattsburgh. The budget process is not lost on me. As a county legislator, we go through this every year. I understand it's nuanced, it's intricate, it's difficult. I'm still picking through it myself. So I'm not here to comment on cuts. There are certain cuts that I'm concerned about, but I'll hold those to a more appropriate time next week. I am employing you as a legislator, speaking to other elected officials, that this process is delicate and it should be public. It should be held publicly, and if there's questions about whether department heads have been involved, bring them in. Have those discussions publicly with department heads, just much like it's been done in the past. And I think that in partnership with department heads coming in, making suggestions on budget changes, you'll get a lot further in a solution, an amicable solution to changes being made to this budget. So again, reiterating my comments from last week, break it down, have public comments, have public meetings with department heads, and break down each individual department budget by budget, item by item, so that they have a say in this process, and that say is being made public. I appreciate your time, thank you, and we'll see you soon. Thanks.
Any other individuals like to please come address the council?
Hello, my name is Denise Dupree, and I am a current business owner in the city of Plattsburgh. And I am here to speak about defunding our police department. Removing $500,000 from the payroll is defunding our police department. Our city has a low crime rate because of our amazing police department. Multiple positions are not currently filled, so why would we cut more? We're not saving any money by cutting more police, because then you have to use the ones that you have for overtime. We're endangering our public and our officers when there's not enough staff to go on calls. Domestic disputes, mental illness, addicts that are alone on the street somewhere, all of those are unpredictable. All of our really good staff that we have now, how long will they stay if they're completely left with no support? I feel like the city is turning their back on the businesses that rely on our police department, turning their back on the citizens that elected everybody to this board and this council, by taking away our safety. I don't know how many who own businesses or how many has had the need for the police officers or EMS to come to any of your businesses or your homes, but would you like your mother to fall on the floor and not be able to get an ambulance? Or would you like your business or home broken into and not be able to have somebody come to your home? Possibly get a counselor 3 days later to say, I'm sorry, your home was broken into? I know I wouldn't. If I'm having heart surgery, I want a heart surgeon to do it. I don't want a counselor that's gonna maybe do a good job. And I think defunding our police department is total lack of safety. And a lot of the positions that you guys are sitting in right now, you may not be there next year. You may not be elected your next term. That's something you guys need to think about.
Any other individuals like to please come address the council?
Hello, I'm Emily Stacy. Some of you I know, I think some I might not. I am the chairperson of the Public Safety Citizens Review Panel and of the Tenant Landlord Panel. I come to you tonight to let you know that with a heavy heart, I am resigning as the chairperson for the Public Safety Citizens Review Panel. I had some different directions that have come to light that need my attention for the last 3 years specifically. My number one priority is finishing my education, and nothing comes before that. For the last almost 4 months now, I have tried my best as being a member of the Safety Review Panel, and I wish the remaining members the best. However, I would like to say that I wish that it could have been better. And by that, I do believe that the Common Council should take into consideration some type of restructuring of some of the panel members that are on there. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your service.
You're welcome, thank you.
Any other individuals like to please come address the council on issues of mutual concern?
They're a delay, so.
Yeah. Thanks, John.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak? I know there's a bit of a delay. Need somebody with a big mouth.
I'm back. So as I was saying, this administration has systematically sidelined and misled the public. Committees are formed in the name of community involvement, and members quit out of frustration, just as the chair of one did a moment ago. This administration has betrayed the trust of our community, and through intransparency, and worse, has devalued the criticisms of those who would speak out. These budget cuts are one more in a series of decisions that disregard our concerns and set our community up for failure. It may be the best of all possible decisions, but how are any of us to know when we are excluded from this process? And as for the crowd gathered here today and the crowd that gathered last week, those are the consequences of your decisions. Not a single one of you deserves to be sitting in these chairs. Thank you. Good night.
Any other individuals like to please come address the council?
Is there anybody else? Is there anyone else that'd like to address the council?
Hello, my name is Aubrey Eldridge. I've lived in Plattsburgh for over 30 years. I watched the video of Monday's press conference at City Hall where the mayor addressed to the public his new revised budget for this year. This budget was referred to as an affordability budget and wanting to assure that the citizens of Plattsburgh find the city to be affordable. You say the goal is to increase the level of services that the city provides, but with moving and reallocating other people from one area to another. You talked about fixing our roads and road repair. I'm asking as someone who cares about our crumbling infrastructure and speaking up for a friend of mine who is disabled and gets around with a wheelchair. This friend of mine is a taxpayer in the city of Plattsburgh and has voiced her opinion to have the sidewalks fixed over 2 years ago. And why now are you proposing road repairs when you were not making a priority 2 years ago? So I just want to understand why we're making these cuts and to really think about them before you propose and go forward with this. Just ridiculous.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other individuals like to please come address the council?
Hello, everybody. I'm Officer Miller, Plattsburgh Police Department. I've been employed there for 18 and a half years. I currently am stationed at the Community Service Center downtown. Since last year, we lost 4 full-time police officers, a full-time dispatcher, and a full-time captain. There's also 3 lieutenant positions that have been vacant for over 2.5 years. None of the positions mentioned have been filled, creating a shortage of police officers, dispatchers, and mid-management. The police department currently has approximately 10,000 blotters or calls for service so far this year. We still have October, November, and December left. On a typical day shift, we have 3 uniformed officers covering the entire city, a supervisor and a dispatcher. Many times, patrol division does not have adequate staff to respond to calls for service because they are on another call. Sometimes officers have to break from an investigation and respond to another complaint or emergency that may be higher priority, such as a physical domestic dispute, a personal injury accident, a burglary, or an emotionally disturbed persons, just for example. We, public safety officials and professionals, are here for the public. We do not close our doors. We do not shut off our phones. We do not ask others to do our job. To all you people listening in our community, we are here for you. Let me ask the council this. Have you had to jump into a cold raging river to save someone? Have you ever had to administer Narcan to someone who has overdosed and clinically dead, but you brought them back to life? Have you ever responded to a suicide scene involving a shooting, a hanging, or an overdose, and had the responsibility to notify the family that their loved one has taken their own life? Have you ever had to pick up and hold a 4-year-old girl in your arms whose teeth and gums are rotted and sore from neglect that she can't eat or drink because she's in severe pain? Have you ever had a gun or a knife pulled on you, threatening your life or the life of someone else, and you have to make that split decision to use lethal force or not? Have you ever responded to investigate an infant death? Well, I have. And so have the men and women at the Plattsburgh Police Department. We are the police. That's what we do. We are proud to protect and serve our community, and our community is proud to have us protect and serve them. A reduction in police presence has been proven to increase crime. Police are concerned with their safety and the increase in violent crime. People are also concerned with their safety and the increase of violent crime. What can you do to make sure that the people in our community are safe? Do not pass the mayor's new revised budget proposal for 2021. If you decide to pass this budget, our public safety will be at risk. Our community is worth protecting. Are you willing to protect them? Keeping our public safety positions at a level that our police, our fire, our EMS can adequately and safely provide services to our community. Please take this into consideration while making your decision. Thank you.
Any other individuals like to please come address the council?
Yes.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Joan Jansen. I think you're familiar with me. I have been, like many others, waiting outside in order to have an opportunity to speak to you. I know that what I'm saying mostly is going to be ignored. That tends to be the way that this group operates. You say you're having a hearing, but you don't really hear anything. You sit and you look at us, and it goes in one ear and out the other. And I point to the fact that you made a decision about the SROs, having a school reference resource officer. And the following meeting, you had to deal with the fallout from that because you didn't contact the schools, you didn't contact the officers. You basically didn't do your homework and talk to your constituents before you made your decision. That tends to be the case around here. I live on Cogan Avenue. It was announced that there was a plan in place. The people on Cogan looked at it and said, that's not at all what we want. You guys had to backtrack and come back to it. I encourage you to please speak to your constituents because decisions that are made with multiple input are better decisions than if you simply come to the decision by yourself, which you're rather fond of doing. In addition, I would like to comment that the physical setup in here is not designed for participatory government. You spent an awful lot of time today congratulating yourselves on what a great job you've done and how open and transparent you are. And you think because this is being streamed live on YouTube that, it's great, everybody can hear it. Well, not everybody can. Not everybody is technologically savvy. But furthermore, YouTube does not permit the community to join in this meeting. Councilor Kelly, you said that you thought it was just great and people are involved in this kind of thing. Well, you can, on Zoom, you can comment. You can raise your hand and you can comment. On YouTube, you cannot. And if people wanted to participate and are being denied that opportunity, that's why you have a vestibule full of people who wish to come in and speak and who are out there cheering those of us that do. The sound in that marble-lined room makes it almost impossible to follow what's happening here. In addition with the delay. I don't know, Councilor Kelly, if you wear hearing aids or not, but if your hearing is anything less than perfect, it makes it more difficult to hear what's going out there, out in the other room. Mayor Reed talked a lot tonight about fairness and fairness and fairness. I would say that the way this room is set up and the way you're holding your meetings is not fair. It's unfair to the people who want to be involved in the process. It's unfair to the people who have to stand outside. We are not 6 feet apart out there. We're all in masks, but if you're going to congratulate yourself at what a good job you've done with COVID, I suggest you do a better job with council meetings when it comes to COVID, so that we have an opportunity to be at least 6 feet apart. I think you should thank your lucky stars that you have people who want to be involved, because your decisions will be better if they're more inclusive. The more diverse, the more inclusive your process is for getting feedback, the better your decisions will be. And thank you this evening.
Thank you. Could you ask if anybody else would like to please come address the council?
I don't believe so. I will check. Anybody else?
Save the best for last. My name's John Seaton. I live here in the city of Plattsburgh. A lot of the problem that we know is part of COVID, but a lot of the problem is crime. We all want development. I worked really hard to get Colin Reed elected. I did a lot. I was at his campaign quarters when he won. It was a very exciting night. Something has gone off the rails in our city. And I worked my whole life to make this city a better place at redeveloping properties that people thought they just need a bulldozer. Whether it was Skid Row or the Merkel building, whether it was the old Grand Union building, or creating a new city court at 22 Years Silva where I used to own, and city court used to be in this room. I raised my family here. I still believe in this city. I worked really hard. I own a property at 43 Durkee Street, which is directly across the street from the Prime project. The problem with Prime was that the city wanted something and somehow it got derailed. It's not what we want. But more importantly for me, and this may sound selfish, the proposed plan right now is actually going to put me out of business because my competitor is going to have all the parking in that geographic area. We've seen the shell game, we've seen all the parking manipulations, but the bottom line is that you need some parking in that geographic area for affordable furniture, for the co-op, and for my business that typically I have 50 employees in there. I've already been put on notice that people are not going to re-sign a lease with me if this goes on. If you want to stop, I guess, wasting and pissing away money, let me suggest that you call Dean and have him drive up in his Maserati and come up with a compromise. And I think one of the most beautiful compromises that can take place is the city needs to keep the surface lot. And it also should keep the farmer's market. Down the way, that would give us an opportunity, if things do get in a better light, that we could potentially have a parking garage there. But you cannot allow a competitor to own all the parking in that geographic area. My people will have no place to park. The employees in this building, maybe they should park way down in the new Arnie Pavone lot and let Iris's tenants that need a place to park in this lot. It's blatantly unfair. I think if you are in the spirit of compromise, you can't allow putting 10 pounds in a 5-pound bag, creating this monster problem, pushing it into the community, and then you guys figure it out. They take all the cream off the top, and guys like me who have busted his ass to try and make this town a better place, Rotarian of the Year, small businessman by the Chamber of Commerce, many downtown commissions through several mayors who've put his money where his mouth is to be put out of business. This is a fight to the death for me. It's survival. It's unfair. And I'll fight to the death. It needs a compromise, and you can do it. You get on the phone and say, look, you alluded to it a little bit earlier about, yes, some mistakes were made, but leadership is about leadership. Your time is running out. You want the respect I think a way to do it is to get those folks on the phone and say, look, you can't put 10 pounds in a 5-pound bag. You can't be manipulating all these parking numbers. And it's still a shell game. It's blatantly unfair. I'm a developer. I want development in this town. I put 40 years of my blood, sweat, and tears into this town. Matt Miller, where were you 5 years ago, 10 years ago? You weren't busting your hump in this community like I was. And I want the respect, and I want leadership. And you can do it by compromise. You don't want any more lawsuits? Do the right thing. In whose mind do you put 10 pounds in a 5-pound bag and think that's good? It's just not.
John?
Have the wherewithal and do the right thing to this community. We'll all back it, we'll be happy and joyful, but you can't let a competitor come in here and put me out of business. I will fight it to the death. Thank you.
John, can you see if anybody else would like to come address the council?
I'll go ask because I don't think John heard me.
Thank you. Seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion.
By Councilor Gibbs, second by Councilor Barbell. Roll call?
Counselor Barbell?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yep.
Counselor Brody?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland? Yes. Counselor Moore?
Yes.
Thank you, folks.